Hello and welcome. Thank you for being here with me today. My name is Zach Keith with Fitness Simplified, and this video is going to be about the reverse Nordic exercise and why, in my opinion, should be considered one of the best quadricep exercises at your disposal. Now, I'm not necessarily one to say any singular exercise is best, absolutely above all others. As you know, as is the case with this one, there may be some reasons why this wouldn't be the best choice of an exercise for you. But if we were going to have to rank quadricep exercises, this certainly would be in the running for, at least top three. If you happen to be a current client of mine watching this, then you are probably already aware of how much I like this exercise because it shows up in a great deal of the programs that I write. So without further ado, let's start talking about the reverse Nordic. So assuming I get the editing right on this video, you should be looking at the start of a video of me on my knees with my toes touching the ground. And before I initiate the exercise here, I'm going to talk about kind of what's going to happen here, and put it to verbiage. So hopefully that makes it a bit more clear. So as you can see, you're going to start out on both knees with an upright posture and your hips straight. Now, you can either have your toes or your shoelaces on the ground. You'll see it done either way, depending on the video you're watching. I tend to prefer the toes on the ground, although, what's going to feel better for you and be best for you will vary. People tend, in my experience, to feel a bit more leverage and to feel a bit stronger with their toes on the ground. And the stretch on the front of your ankle can feel a bit intense with your shoelaces on the ground. But nevertheless, it's worth experimenting with both if you want to try this exercise and see which one feels better to you. So as the exercise is initiated, I'm going to lean back slowly while keeping my hips straight. So the important thing here is that there is no movement at the hips. There won't be once I play the video, you'll see. And the only movement that's occurring is at the knee. I'm going to go back as far as I can. And if possible, I'm going to pause briefly in that deepest point. And then while keeping my hips straight, I'm going to lift my body by pressing my feet into the floor to return to an upright erect position. So let's go ahead and run through the video. So you'll see that the only movement that's occurring is at my knees. My hips are staying straight. And I'm just kind of lifting my upper body, my torso and thighs up and down using the quadricep muscles as the force generator and my feet as the point through which I generate force. Now, what you should notice is that this is largely the same thing as a machine leg extension. And that is exactly what you are training here. It is knee extension purely. And just as a quick tangent, the reason it is called a reverse Nordic is because the Nordic curl was already taken. A Nordic hamstring curl is one in which there is some sort of support over the back of your Achilles tendon on over the top of your back of your foot in the same position, where you would lean forward and your hamstrings would bring you up and down. Now, before I continue, this exercise can feel very advanced at first. It's not an exercise that I would say you need to be advanced to do. I wouldn't necessarily add that sort of gatekeeping to it, but it can feel, intense at first. And so there's a series of progressions that I would recommend you do that might help you, just feel a bit better as you do this. I'm going to link an article to that progression series below if you want to try that and work to build to this. Even if you do necessarily have the fitness to do it, sometimes you just feel better following a progression like this before you jump right into this specific exercise. And it is probably worth building a good degree of leg extension strength relative to your body weight before you perform this exercise. And that, when I say that, I mean using a machine leg extension. Just because if your strength in that direction isn't there yet, this exercise might provide a bit more load than what would be optimal for you. Other options beside the machine leg extension, if you do not have access to one, will be provided in that progression series that I will link below. Another instance in which this exercise might not be the best option for you is if you have long femurs relative to your body. The reason for that is that balance might just become a problem in an exercise such as this if your femurs are long relative to your body. Usually people with such femur lengths tended to also have trouble squatting deeply with an upright torso. There are certain modifications you could make in order to make the exercise more comfortable if you fit this bill. However, they won't be covered in this video. So if you feel like you fit that bill and you want to talk about something to get that straightened out, then you are welcome to email me at info@fitnesssimplified.org, and we can chat about what you might be able to do about that. So let's quickly cover why I think this exercise is so good and why everyone should at least know about it. And there's three main reasons why I'm going to argue this point. So to start, it loads your quadriceps in a very stretched position, which, as you may have noticed, training muscles in their longer length position has been shown to be much better for muscle growth. And that's, in large part a big trend in the training and, muscle building world right now. And this effect has even been shown in the quadriceps specifically. There was a 2022 randomized control trial that split subjects into 4 groups. And each group performed the machine leg extension exercise in one of the following ways. So the first group performed them with a full range of motion. The second group performed them with a partial range of motion, but that partial range of motion was performed in the more stretched position. So if we're talking about a machine leg extension, we're talking about the point where your feet are closer to underneath the seat to about halfway to full extension. There was a third group that also did partial range of motion reps, but at the opposite end. So they would go from full leg extension to only about halfway down and up and down in that fashion. And then the fourth group was a varied rep group that did all 3 of these different types of reps with a daily alteration between them. What they found was that the partial range of motion group that performed their reps with the more stretched position experienced greater muscle growth than all the other groups, although the one repetition maximum strength between the full range of motion and the partial rep group in the stretch position was similar. However, nevertheless, the idea is that training muscles in a longer length position tends to add more tension to the muscle, which is better for muscle growth. And this effect has not only been shown in the quadriceps, but also in the hamstrings, the calves, and the triceps. Now, reason 2 and 3 for why I like this exercise largely kind of coincide with one another. So I'll talk about each reason in the same sort of point. Now, your quadriceps are made up of 4 distinct muscles, which hence the name, 3 of which, the vastus medialis, vastus lateralis, and vastus intermedius, only cross the knee joint. What this means is that anytime the knee extension movement is performed, whether it is in a squat kind of pattern or a leg extension kind of pattern, they are largely going to be activated to a similar degree. The fourth muscle, the rectus femoris, is different in that it crosses the knee and the hip joint. The reason that this is significant is that when you perform something like a squat, for example, the rectus femoris lengthens at the end of the knee, but it shortens at the end of the hip. As a result, there is not much net change in muscle length throughout the motion of something like a squat, and therefore it does not contribute much to the force production of such an exercise. And again, as always, all references I'm using to make claims such as that will be cited in the accompanying article that I will cite below, and the reason I put them there is that I can cite the references next to the specific claims of which I am making. So if you want to fact check anything that I'm saying or look deeper into it, hopefully that helps you correspond the right reference to the right claim. So nevertheless, the idea is that to sufficiently train the rectus femoris, you need some exercise that only trains hip extension, because if the hip only trains knee extension, not hip extension, because if the hip is still and only the knee is moving, then there is a significant change in muscle length at the rectus femoris, and therefore it can contribute to the movement. Now, that explains why you would need some knee extension only exercise like the reverse Nordic or the machine leg extension, but it does not necessarily explain why the reverse Nordic, in my opinion, is the superior exercise. And the reason that I say this is because as you lean back in that reverse Nordic position, when you're at the bottom, when your body is more or closer to being parallel with the floor, the gravity wants to pull your torso down at the angle of your hip. And so there has to be a degree of hip flexion to fight that, as well as the knee extension to bring yourself up and down. Now, because the rectus femoris also crosses the hip joint, it does partially help with hip flexion, in other words, the process of bringing your knee closer to your chest. And so using something like the reverse Nordic helps you train both aspects of the rectus femoris at the same time. So all in all, that is why the reverse Nordic, in my opinion, deserves to be something you're aware of as far as quadricep training. All of the resources that I mentioned, I will link below, whether it's the accompanying article, whether it's the progression, the line of progression exercises to build up to the reverse Nordic. So with that said, I'm going to end this video here. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this, and I hope to see you next time.